Welcome to another edition of the Well and Good podcast. My name's Jay Smack. Here we talk about wellness, goodness, and how do you define goodness? Well, it's nonprofits and positivity and that kind of stuff. Basically, if it makes you curious or is perhaps maybe good for you, if you can learn something, we like to talk about it. Today, my guest is Dave Robinson from GS Nation. GS stands for Get Strapped, and Dave offers fitness coaching, accountability, personalized and tailored workout programs, personal training, online group coaching, all that kind of stuff. And he's also got a podcast with one of his associates, Cary Hairfield. So it's the GS Nation podcast with Cary and Dave. You can find that on their website at gsnation.com or go to iTunes/Apple Podcasts. Check it out, and check it out on Facebook. Dave's a super positive guy, super motivated, and he makes wellness and exercise and getting fit a whole lot of fun. And you can tell from his energy level and his enthusiasm that he's pretty darn good at it. So let's check it out. This is my conversation with Dave Robinson of GS Nation. We rap for a little while, and hopefully you'll learn something. Here he is.
Well, cool, man. I guess we're rolling now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Hanging out with Dave Robinson on the Well and Good podcast of GS Nation. Now, you've got a couple iterations / identities. There's GS Nation.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different, or is it just something that you're kind of honing different from Get Strapped, Stay Strapped? So 'cause you got a couple different spots.
Get Strapped, Stay Strapped was originally, when I go back to 2016, when I started this particular journey, that was, that's the name of our LLC, right? So that's what it originally started as, and then we've morphed and molded that into the GS Nation. And so GS Nation is the business and the brand now. Get Strapped, Stay Strapped has become my personal page, as opposed to pumping everything business and not through that. So,
is there a distinction? I know GS Nation is a collection of people, but you as, say, an individual fitness consultant, are you under Get Strapped, Stay Strapped?
So the distinction would be GS Nation would be the community, right? And so the way that I do my coaching, it is still under GS Nation. If I were to get a personal sponsorship for racing, for example, that would be under Get Strapped, Stay Strapped. And so they are separate, even though they're kind of one and the same.
Now, you mentioned racing. Let's get into that. So
cool.
First of all, maybe just give a little bit of background as to how you ended up here, a personal trainer, a coach with a community around you, your passion for fitness, and what OCR is and how it's developing and, your interest in it, because it's a big part of who you are.
It is. It's a very big part of who I am. So I'll kind of share this. I was asking my mom the other day, was I always active? Like, I don't really remember so much being a little boy or tiny kid or anything like that. And she said, you were always leaping and falling on the ground, always, and I do remember my mom getting upset at one point. Maybe I was around 10 or 12. My buddies and I had just torn up the backyard playing football. And she was like, the grass. And my dad was like, honey, we're raising boys, not grass. So let them go play. So I've always been active. I was never really what I would call a smooth or natural athlete. I was always kind of like the hustle guy that really, really tried hard, but didn't necessarily have the technical abilities to go as far as I would have liked to go in soccer, which is the sport that I love and chose first and still play once or twice a week. When I got to college, my random roommate at James Madison University freshman year, so that was 2006, was a 4-time national junior powerlifting champion. So I came to school 155 pounds, soaking wet. I'm about 5'9", and left at about 215. And that was after 4 years of just really hard, intense training. And it was then, maybe about halfway through freshman year, I really started to fall in love with that. So I ended up getting a job in the school library my sophomore year, in large part so that I could go out and, do my library rounds and just, tuck away in a corner and nerd out on strength and conditioning and nutrition and et cetera.
Like reading up on it?
Reading up on it. Yeah, exactly. Pull up journals and, I checked people in at the front desk, and so it was really easy to just swipe a card, but I'm sitting there with a computer and just have articles up. And so I actually went to school as a business finance major, couldn't do the math, switched to history, realized that I didn't want to be a high school history teacher, and I stopped applying for master's programs about April of my senior year, like a month or two before I graduated, and I had no plan. So I competed in the Richmond Open in, I believe, April of, a month before I was going to graduate. I ended up meeting the Richmond Open's a powerlifting meet. So I ended up meeting one of the strength and conditioning coaches at U of R at that meet, and he brought me on board to University of Richmond, where I was a strength and conditioning coach there for about 10 months. So I worked with football, men's soccer, women's soccer primarily, helped out with some field hockey and lacrosse, learned a ton about strength and conditioning as a whole. It also, at the time I was also a personal trainer in a box gym here in town, worked for a youth sports performance center. I burned myself out in the gym, and wanting to find a career that afforded me a little bit more flexibility of both time and income, I got into financial planning, which I did for 8 years. Built up a nice practice, but if I'm being honest with myself and with everyone listening, I really didn't enjoy that, and I didn't want to build a 40-year career off something that I was like, yeah.
Better get out now than
exactly.
get so far in.
Exactly. And so in November of 2017, I had been doing personalized programs for people, personalized workout programs. I was doing individualized coaching, wasn't doing any personal training, hadn't built the community yet, but, I was starting to get some success in racing, which we'll talk about shortly. And people, were asking me, hey, how are you doing this? Like, what can you help me get better? Right. And so in November of 2017, I left my financial planning career, brought on my business partner, Brian, and we launched GS Nation on June 1st. So taking it back to obstacle course racing, OCR, one of the fastest growing sports of all time. And think Tough Mudder, think Spartan racing, think pictures of your friends, smiling and covered in mud after a long race. And, Spartan's tagline is, you'll know at the finish line. And you do. If you run one of those races, it can be incredibly challenging. The first race I did kicked my tail so bad. I mean, I finished in the thousands overall. It was up and down the ski slopes at Wintergreen.
Oh,
so, yeah. And when I say up and down, I mean up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down over
How
and
long
over
was
again.
it?
8 miles or so.
Yeah.
And it took me plus 30 or 40 obstacles, and it took me probably 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
I don't know exactly, but I swore to God I would never do it again. And the next year I did it just to see if I can, just to kind of conquer it a little bit. And then the next year I did 3, and then 6, and then 12, and then I started getting serious. And instead of finishing in the thousands, I was finishing in the low hundreds. And this past year in 2018, I hit a long-standing goal of mine to qualify for the Obstacle Course Racing World Championships, which I competed in London.
Oh, wow.
Cool. Yeah.
You did that already?
I did that.
When was that? I didn't know that.
That was October of 2018, so a couple months ago. So I ended up finishing top 100 in my age group from 30 to 39. So I was pretty pumped about that, and excited for another big year this year.
Are there sponsorship opportunities or anything like that around it?
There are. At the top level, there are probably maybe 1 or 2 dozen people who are full-time through both race, prizes from winning races and then sponsorships. The heavier sponsors haven't come in yet. It's not like Nike is picking up folks, but I think that will come. I actually was sponsored by a local footwear company called Kinnis. And Kinnis makes, if you're familiar with maybe Vibram shoes or those minimalist shoes, so they make a pair of socks that have a flexible but durable plastic bottom to it so that you can basically exercise barefoot, which is, I've been kicking off my shoes. I actually got in trouble at JMU all the time for kicking off my shoes and deadlifting and squatting in my socks, right? And so...
Why did they think that would promote injury? Or?
I think it was maybe a safety issue. You don't have something covering your feet in case you drop something on yourself, or a hygiene issue. I mean, I don't know exactly what it was, but I'm a big fan and a big believer in that minimalist movement from the standpoint of making sure that your feet and the muscles and tendons and ligaments in your feet and lower legs become strong. And a lot of times wearing modern day footwear really kind of turns off that proprioception and that strength. Your body doesn't need to learn how to cushion itself properly because it has footwear to do so. So that actually leads to a lot of injuries. But Kinnis actually sponsored my race fees and a large part of my travel fees for the OCR Worlds, and they're doing so again this year, which is great.
That's cool. It sounds like also a lot of fun.
Man.
My parallel would be mountain biking. I'm a big cyclist guy. Yeah. And mountain biking, you're sure it's a hell of a workout, but you're having so much fun you barely even realize that.
It's exhilarating.
Yeah.
I mean, a big reason why I love Spartan is the venues specifically. You know, like I'll race in Asheville, and it's not downtown; it's in the mountains. And we race in West Virginia, and West Virginia is beautiful, and it's in the mountains. And a lot of these races, you're running through the woods, and you're able to look around you and see nature and beauty. And there's something really special about bombing down a mountain.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I don't mountain bike again, but I would imagine it's very similar. There's a high risk, high reward to that. And
yeah.
And that's a big adrenaline rush.
Yeah, it totally is. And no matter what you're doing, water skiing, snowboarding, running, there's that high of being outside and you're feeling good and it's giving back to you directly. And,
exactly.
And then you finish and you're glad to be done.
Yep.
But you feel so good at the same time.
You feel so good. I mean, there have been a number of races where I've been overcome with emotion at the end of it. And, just based on the effort I put in and, all the hard work going into it paying off. One race in particular, it was very notorious for they call it so in Spartan, you have all these different obstacles and sometimes they're, rings or monkey bars. You've got to crawl under barbed wire and throw a spear and all this stuff. But Spartan is synonymous as a brand for their heavy carries. And this race is in Palmerton, Pennsylvania. It's about 8 miles or so on a ski resort. And it's notorious for the double sandbag carry. And so it's two 60-pound sandbags where you go down a double black diamond, turn back around and come up the double black diamond.
And are you carrying these
You're carrying
sandbags?
both sandbags. And
it's not like you pick another one.
No, you don't. Down and up with both. And, I saw grown men like me in the elite class who looked fantastic, just broken and beaten from this thing. And when I got through that particular part and ended up, which was about halfway through the race, I sprained my ankle pretty bad, which led to some lingering issues for a while towards the last maybe quarter of the race, and still was able to push through. And, when I crossed that finish line, I know for a fact I had given it everything I had. And it's a cool feeling, and I remember just crossing and just dropping to my knees and being like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that.
I bet you get emotional sometimes.
Definitely.
I mean, when you're just completely spent and you're taxed and
yep.
The physical side of you has nothing left to give. All you can do is just have an emotional outpouring.
Exactly.
So there's a couple other things you got going on. Like what's the 50-mile ultra marathon for child cancer research?
Yeah. So that was November of 2017 was a big time in my life. That was a really cool thing that a buddy of mine, Patrick Kearney, and I actually put on a ultra marathon here.
Oh, you guys did it yourself?
Yeah, we did it ourselves. We put on the race. Just us ran the whole 50, but we had a lot of friends and supporters kind of come in for bits and pieces of it here and there. But that story actually started about August of 2017. Pat and I were with a bunch of friends at a beach trip, and he and I went out for a walk on the beach after we were kind of throwing the football and everything, just kind of relaxing. And he brought up to me that he wanted to do something to honor his sister, Becca, who had passed away 10 years prior to from leukemia. And, he said, hey, I'm thinking about running this race. I just want to feel a fraction of the pain that Becca felt, have some solidarity, maybe raise some money, that type of thing. So I said, cool, awesome. He texted me like that Tuesday. The conversation was a Saturday. He texted me on Tuesday, hey, I signed us up for for this race, which was in 3 weeks, right? Oh my God.
Do you do much running?
At the time, the farthest I'd ever run in my life was 15 miles, and we were signing up for a 50-miler. We actually got waitlisted for that race, and about a week later, I got bit by a spider, and that put me in the hospital for three days. Yeah, which was not a fun experience. Still paying that bill. But what that led us to do was to decide, okay, well, there aren't any other races that we can join. We want to do this thing. Let's make our own. And so we did the River City 50 miler. We called it the Hurtin' for a Cure River City 50 miler. And so I still do and did a lot at the time of work with the child cancer support organization here in Richmond called the Connors Heroes Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everybody's got their thing. I'm probably not going to go volunteer for Richmond Animal League. I love dogs and cats. Habitat for Humanity is great. Probably not going to go build houses. This is kind of my thing.
Sure, you find your spot.
Find your spot, exactly. And so I was mentoring a young boy by the name of Jack who had leukemia, and Jack's doing great now. But when Jack and I first started to hang out together through the superhero and sidekick program that Connors Heroes puts on, he couldn't go outside. It's middle of the summer, and I'd go over to his house, and we'd be inside playing Legos, not outside leaping and falling on the ground like I grew up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Patrick wanted to run for Becca. I wanted to run for those who can't run, knowing that one day I won't be able to run just due to the inevitable decline of the human body due to old age. I wanted to maximize that now and see what we can actually get through and do. So long story short, we raised about $7,500 for childhood cancer research happening here in Richmond through Connors Heroes. And we, our longest training run before that, we hit 20 miles twice, and then we doubled it and added 10. And it was hands down the most difficult experience of my entire life, but probably the most transcending and the most rewarding as well.
Is it something you think will happen again?
10 years. It's in
okay.
my, I think once I'm in my, late 30s, early 40s, I'll probably pick up ultra running again. For men, peak strength and power output drops pretty precipitously in your early to mid 30s. And so I turned 31 in a couple weeks. This is my peak, or a little bit after my peak, or in my peak for that particular kind of mode of training, that power and strength style. And so I'm going to maximize that while I can. Whereas aerobically, you can maintain, 90% of your max aerobic capacity into your 40s. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to shift gears a little bit as I get a little bit older and focus more on that longer distance stuff, because even though it was the hardest thing I've ever done, even though I was in more pain than I've ever been in before in my life, during the 50 miler, I was nowhere close to my limit, and I need to figure out what that is. So I've got a 100 miler on the books.
Where did the pain? I used to run. I don't do it anymore. It just beat me up too bad.
Sure.
Some people are just not given to it, and I stopped and started really, or not started, but leaned really on the cycling. But
sure.
My brother and a bunch of friends, they run, and when you're doing a marathon, they say, once you get past, it's like 19, 20, 21 miles, that's when it really starts getting painful. Where did it kick in for you in 50?
23.
Oh, no.
Yep.
You had
miles 23 to 30 were not fun at all. Actually, I couldn't push off. Like, I had a knife in my big toe, and I couldn't push off on that side. And so obviously I'm compensating.
Right. That's
which means,
cause other problems.
My left hip starts flaring up because my right big toe is hurting, and I'm putting different pressure on this and that. And so, you have that cascading effect up your kinetic chain. And if that had continued, I don't know what I would have done. Let's put it to you that way. But I ended up changing shoes. I ended up getting a good, solid meal in me at about mile 30, because at that point, that was 10 miles farther than I'd ever gone in my life. And so, once we passed over that 20, that started to become uncharted territory. And so, that marathon wall hit me square in the face at mile 23, kind of like where it does everybody else. And for some reason, I kind of think I'm immune to things, and I'm not.
You gotta, but see, that's interesting. Yeah. You got to have that mindset.
Right.
And what I was just thinking is that so much of an event like that, especially an endurance event or extreme event, pardon the cliche, is so much of it is mental.
100%.
If you can talk yourself out of giving up, you can push through and be surprised at what you're able to accomplish.
2 notes on that. I think that if we had not had that why, if it wasn't such a deep and visceral thing, I don't know whether we would have finished it. But both Patrick and I, we ran it in about 13 hours. We would have ran it in 36 hours, like if we had to crawl it. We were both going to finish that race no matter what. The other side of the coin there, I typically write a message to myself on my arm in Sharpie on my left arm for races, and I'll adopt a mantra for races. And so for the big championship race I had a couple months ago, it was, my legs are strong, my lungs are strong, my heart is strong, I'm enduring. And I said that over and over and over, like incessantly for about 3 hours. I don't think I ever wavered a second from just having that go over in my head the whole time.
It's crazy how helpful that is.
It's so helpful because it didn't allow me the second to think about, wow, this hurts and this sucks. Like I love doing it. It's so much fun, but it hurts while you're doing it. And sometimes if I don't have that mantra going, I'll get halfway through a race and I'm, crawling up a hill, it seems. And I'm going, why am I doing this? This is so stupid.
I can just stop. I can stop anytime I want. No one's telling me to do this.
So in order to avoid that, that mantra was very helpful. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, let's get into GS Nation a little bit. And through looking through all the materials and stuff like that you have, some things jumped out at me, and it's really the attitude that you guys, I say you guys because you've got a community around you, the attitude you project and how positive it is. There's positivity in a lot of physical exercise and trainers and things of that nation, but some words that jumped out from your website and your materials: mind-altering, confidence, fun, inclusive, personal, personalized, all kinds of stuff. And you've got different kinds of coaching, happy and healthy coaching, athlete and OCR. Talk a little bit about the approach of GS Nation, because I think the biggest obstacle for anybody when they're considering a workout plan is they probably think they're going to be the one person there who most should not be there, whether it's somebody joining a gym, and people in the gym are like, come work out, get healthy with it. We don't care, what the self-image is worse than any appearance thing that can be projected. Just maybe talk a little bit about your attitude and approach.
Yeah. I believe that when you change your mindset, you can change your world. I believe that you happen to life doesn't happen to you. And there are two types of people: the people who believe that, this is just my dumb luck, or this is the way it is, or the people that believe they can go out and change it and affect it. Obviously, sometimes people are dealt really poor cards, but for the most part, you can become and do anything you want to do in this life. There are no such thing as unrealistic goals, merely unrealistic timelines, right? So when I was a personal trainer, what I realized was that people hire personal trainers for two reasons: direction and accountability. Okay. You pay me X amount of dollars and I'm going to, show up and make sure that you know what to do and how to do it safely and get you towards your goals. The other thing I realized was that trainers and most coaches only get paid for that hour that they're with their client. But there's 23 other hours in the day, multiple days per week, that's really where your gains or losses come from, right? That's really, the training is a small part of it all. So I wanted to create a health 360 model, where we're looking at all aspects of that human being, because, our bodies can't differentiate between stressors, emotional stress, physical stress, mental stress, spiritual stress. And in that same manner, everything affects everything else. Our bodies work in concert with one another, and they work in concert with our minds. And so I focus and start with mindset. Then we focus on sleep, nutrition, training, recovery, and the community around you. So
wow, sleep comes that early in the chain.
Sleep comes that early in the chain. And I'm probably one of the only people that's going to tell you, don't come to your workout tomorrow because you had a shitty night's sleep. You need to focus on that first and foremost. And I don't get paid to do that necessarily, right? But I cancel appointments. I say, like, go home, and it's something that because I have adopted it for myself and seen how beneficial and valuable it is for me, I can say that with confidence that, hey, if you go and if you get an extra 45 minutes of sleep a day, if you go from 6.5 to 8, your whole world changes, and again, that confidence that you build in the gym, that confidence that comes from hard work, that manifests itself in every other aspect of your life. All of a sudden, now your shoulders are backing down a little bit. You're standing up a little bit taller, and you know what? Yeah, I'll go out tonight. I'll go to that event that you probably were going to stay home and skip, and then you'll talk to that girl at the bar, or you'll say hey to that guy, or you'll ask for that raise, and it manifests itself in so many other different ways. And so, I wanted to build a model based around blue zones, which is a concept where
I read about that. What is that?
Yeah, so blue zones are 5 areas around the world that have been identified where people are living the longest and are the happiest and the healthiest. And so, why is that the case? They're spending time outside, they're moving naturally, they downshift, and they're able to downshift, meaning, take stress off. They've got a great community of loved ones. They've got people who hold them accountable, who they can count on. They eat locally, they eat well-sourced, they eat mindfully. They, they're focused on a lifestyle. They have passion. They know why they wake up in the morning. And, that lifestyle and that in these places, it is difficult for them to be unhealthy. Whereas in the rest of the world, it's hard to be healthy.
The Mediterranean area really jumps out in my mind.
And two out of the 5 blue zones are in the Mediterranean. Ikaria off the coast of Greece, Sardinia off the coast of Italy.
Oh, they're that specific?
That specific.
Oh.
Okinawa off the coast of Japan.
Are any in Australia?
There's not.
No.
There's a town called Loma Linda in Southern California, and then there's a peninsula in Costa Rica that's been identified as a blue zone.
Wow.
And again, in all these different places, it's easy for them to be healthy because it's just the way that they live. It's the natural lifestyle of things. So when I looked at creating something, I knew I didn't just want to be a personal trainer. I knew I didn't just want to be a coach. I knew I wanted to build a community around, these different factors, these 6 factors or these 5 factors of mindset, sleep, nutrition, training, recovery in that community. And so, with that kind of health and wellness 360 model, I knew that making Richmond a blue zone would be a moonshot, but GS Nation is the blue zone. If you're plugged in with our programming, exactly. If you're coming to our social events, if you're coming to our quarterly goal setting seminars, if you're coming to our group workouts, if you're following our sleep guide and our nutritional program, it's going to be hard for you to be unhealthy. It just really is because, we're going to nudge you, as Dan Butner, the founder of Blue Zone, says, subtly and relentlessly towards health and wellness. And it's going to make you happy.
With that in mind, there's something a little bit farther down the list I did want to ask you about. You being super healthy guy and, blue zones and all, how do you feel about occasional vices and slips and live life a little bit, things of that nature?
I build myself an off season.
Mm-hmm.
So my season ended on October 12th of 2018, and I messed around for 8 weeks.
Within reason.
Within reason.
Imagine.
Yeah. I was active, right? I still moved every day. That's something that I've done for over 1,000 days in a row is I intentionally set aside time to make a concerted effort to better myself physically. I still did that, but I dialed volume and intensity back by about 80%. I did what I wanted to do as opposed to following my program that I wrote for myself. If I wanted to go lift arms, I went in and lifted arms. If I wanted to go for a long walk, I took a long walk.
How about a full-on vice approach, say holiday food or something?
100%.
Yeah.
I ate whatever I wanted. I had drinks. I had a good time with friends. I stayed out late. I took off my fitness and health and wellness tracker,
wow.
Because I didn't want to know.
And you get addicted to the steps.
You do. You get addicted to the stats.
Else.
Yeah. And so for me, I'm an all or nothing personality, right? If you give me the option, I like beer, just like everybody else likes beer, or many people like beer, right? If I tell myself, okay, I can have 2 days this week where I can drink, those 2 days very well may be Monday and Wednesday, but then Friday will roll around, and because it's an option, I'll do it. Whereas I'm not drinking until October. I'm not drinking until after the OCR World Championships, and then I'm going to go.
You mean now?
From now so Jan 1 to October 12th. Then I'm going to have a damn good time for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and a lot of our members have adopted that and found it to be very, very helpful because I know there's an end in sight. I'm still going to have fun with my friends. I'm still going to go out. I'm just going to have a soda water and lime. And, I know it's a choice and not a sacrifice. So I have choices written on my mirror.
That's well put, because the thing comes up like Sober October or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And having a goal, I think, is a little bit different than just saying, okay, I'm not going to do something from date 1 to date 2, which can also be beneficial.
Sure.
But how did you put it again?
So I have.
No, I mean, what was that phrase? I'm going to make it a goal, not a sacrifice.
Yep. It's a choice, not a sacrifice. Yeah. And so that's the way that I view really everything that I'm going through right now. Entrepreneurship is hard, man.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to build a business. It's hard to build a brand. It's hard to do all of the things. I'm doing an exercise now where I'm writing out all the things that I'm going to start doing, all the things I'm going to stop doing, and all the things I'm going to continue to do. But in order to do that, I have to write down all the things that I do, right? And I'm handwriting this list, and I've got 4 pages of things of these individual tasks. And eventually I want to be able to be like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do, I'm not going to deal with our social media anymore. I'll delegate that. Or yeah, I do need to start sending out that email, on a weekly basis or whatever it may be. But, I get to do this. It's a choice. I get to train. I get to not drink for 10 months. It's not a sacrifice. It's a choice. And so I have that written on my mirror in my bathroom, and every day I see it, and it reminds me before I go out to the door in the morning and before I go to bed at night that it's a choice. And that choice is going to ultimately make me much, much happier than the drink with friends would, or, the staying out late with a girl or whatever it may be. So.
Absolutely. And if you can just put something off, say an hour, and then that turns into a day, and then that turns into a week. Just put it off.
Yep. Yep. I always tell myself I'll quit tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. Everything in moderation, even moderation.
Yeah.
You were talking about pacing yourself and getting older and things of that nature. What are your thoughts on pushing through an injury while working out? And the other side of that is how to adapt a workout plan if you've got a limitation. Say it's an old nagging injury or something that stays with you, maybe a shoulder problem or arthritis. What are your thoughts on that, pushing through or accommodating, et cetera?
Great question. I believe that the best ability is availability. The best ability is availability. If you are hurt, you can't go play. And if you can't go play, you can't get paid, right? And so I would rather be 10% undertrained than 1% overtrained. And so when I have something nagging pop up, if that foot thing pops up again, runs over. Walking home, I might even walk to the road, call an Uber, get back to my car, and I'll go cycle, or I'll go swim, or I'll do something like that. Now, with that being said, you obviously need to push through plateaus and pain in order to get better and force those physiological adaptions and those mental adaptions. But there's a difference between being in pain and being injured. If you're injured, stop. The other thing I'll say is a lot of the time, most of those kind of nagging things or chronic things are due to structural imbalances, muscular weaknesses elsewhere, or not having the right proprioception and neuromuscular connections. So things are, in effect, turned off, from a muscular standpoint. We talk a lot about, firing different muscles, right? And what that means is just having that ability, that connection, that brain-body connection to be able to contract that muscle. And I've had shoulder issues that stemmed from the fact that my lats weren't firing. So I'm doing shoulder rehab stuff. I'm getting massages on my shoulder. I'm looking at my shoulder. But until I went to a doctor that actually could make that brain-body connection, and she put a thumb in my lat and had me do a couple different little exercises, and lo and behold, the next day I'm able to
freed it right back
up, and I'm good to go. So our body is covered with a sheath of muscle tissue called fascia. And fascia, it's now being, muscle fascia is it's actually the largest organ in your body other than your skin. It runs pretty much everywhere in your body. And it is, scientists have now kind of discovered, this is very recent, that they didn't really know what it was for a long time, but they believe it's the avenue through which electrical impulses are sent through your body, based on the structure of it and how it goes everywhere. So that could be a Western medicine's explanation for why something like acupuncture would work, right? Because you're opening up different energy channels and whatnot, right? And I'm not trying to get woo-woo with any of this stuff, but that's, you have adhesions that get built up, or you have blockages that get built up, or, these things are supposed to kind of move like tectonic plates would, over top of one another. But sometimes one gets stuck, and that's going to cause an impairment down the road. That's going to cause on-site pain potentially. You're going to compensate for that, just like we talked about with the foot earlier, and pain is going to pop up in other different areas. And so, when you can really get to the root cause of your injuries or pain or chronic this or limitations that, then you're able to either fix it or work around it.
That's a really interesting point. And speaking of proprioception, I had some personal experience. I had a bunch of sprained ankles when I was younger, and it recently cropped back up over the last few years. And I went to the doctor when I had my last instance, and he brought that up, proprioception, and he prescribed physical therapy. He goes, what's happening is your brain has now decided whenever your ankle starts to turn, it gives up to try to save you from doing it, which actually makes it worse. So that connection wasn't firing. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and try out those shoes too, or the shoe socks from Kinnis, because a lot of times, your body turns off those connections because you don't really quote unquote need it, right? You've got cushioning now, that's an inch thick in a lot of places, and so I don't necessarily need to fire all those balancing muscles. I don't need to fire, your foot is the most intricate part of your entire body, and it turns off because it doesn't need it. Use it or lose it. Your body's going to want to hang on to things that it's actually using. And so, when you move back to using something minimal to where you can connect with the ground and connect, with each step again, you might see that strength in the ankle and the connective tissue build back up again.
Cool. I'll try that.
Give that a shot.
You mentioned acupuncture, and I was going to ask you whether you incorporate other wellness practices into your regimen.
I do.
We did the Wim Hof process together, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Brian Muka of Fear Sherpa led that, and I think you've done it a number of times with him.
Very much.
Other stuff, meditation, acupuncture, anything like that you practice?
Definitely. So I'm big into recovery, both on a macro standpoint from structuring my year so that I have an off season to where I'm not mentally and physically fatiguing myself, from kind of that week to week standpoint to where I do take active recovery days and rest days, and I'm not going 100% all the time. But then I do utilize a number of other recovery techniques. I get a massage twice a month. I'll float in a sensory deprivation tank.
I love that, yeah.
I would love to do it more often than I do. I'm probably at about once a month now. Ideally, I would like to do it once a week. I get acupuncture for specific injuries. If something does pop up, I've got a couple people in town I go see for that. I go to Invigorate Cryotherapy for cold exposure work. And then I oftentimes will, now is actually a really good time to do this, is on my weekly runs down by the river, I'll just take my shoes off and go stick my ankles in the river. And it's, for those of you who aren't necessarily in Richmond right now, it's 18 degrees outside, and the river's pretty darn cold. I do ice baths, I do sauna work. So if I'm trying to build muscle tissue, or if I have a strength training workout, I'm not going to go and do an ice bath after that. If I'm running, I will. Right. And so there's different times you can kind of optimize these things, but I listen to my body very well. If I wake up and I feel trashed, even if I have a workout scheduled, I'll skip it. I'll do something else. And I think that having that intuitive knowledge and it's not even really a skill. I don't think it's just being open enough to listen to yourself and say, today I feel great. Like, let's drop the hammer. And on the other end, today I don't feel good at all. And maybe it's lack of sleep. Maybe I drank last night. Maybe I haven't eaten the right foods. Maybe I'm getting sick and it's a day or two prior to that. Maybe I am sick. I monitor. How
do you address that with your groups when you have a group workout? Because some people might be on fire one day and some of the other people might not be feeling it so much, but still work out.
I ask for two things. I ask for attitude and effort. That's it. I don't care where you are. And that's part of the inclusivity thing. This might be your first workout off the couch for your entire life. And just try as hard as you can on that particular day and don't complain. And that's all I ask. And we'll accommodate you in every single way. The body gives clues, as does the mind, when you don't have it. You know, like I can see fatigue in people. I can see it in their eyes. You know, I can see it in body language. I can see it in how they're actually moving. Things start to go a different way than you would like them to go from a biomechanical standpoint. And, you know, a lot of times that's just an arm over the shoulder of like, hey, why don't we call it? You know, like that was your last one, you know, and that builds trust.
And you see the look of relief in their eyes.
You see the look of relief. Yeah. And, you know, I sent a girl home last week. She had a hip thing. And I said, what are you doing? She said, well, I wanted to come hang out. I think I can work with this. And I told her to go home. And she went home. Like she didn't work out because she shouldn't have been there based on what that workout was going to be and then training for that particular injury. And, you know, ultimately that was the best thing for her to do. I don't want to get sued and I don't want people to get hurt. You know, I mean, I've been hurt and it's not fun. And so the best ability is availability.
And you start to resent the workout.
Yeah.
Put you behind.
Yeah. And, you know, motivation will wane. It'll come and go. It ebbs and flows. You know, but attitude and effort are the two controllables.
Now talk about your app a little bit. I didn't even know you had an app. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. I'm looking at it right now, and you can search for it on the iTunes Store. Fitness app by Trainerize.
Yeah, so the way that we actually skinned that. So
I see.
In order to get into our version of that particular app, you've got to join as a member.
Okay.
Which is $250 for the year or $25 a month. And what you get for that is you get access to that app as well as access to our nutritional guidelines and sleep guide. And you get to come to all of our group workouts that we have every week that are outdoors. What the app does is it provides both video and text instruction based on a goal-oriented workout program. So right now we have two different workout tracks. We have our Stay Strapped track, which is the athlete track. And then we have a Get Strapped track, which is a beginner or intermediate track. The beginner track can be done at home with no weights. The intermediate part of that track can be done either at home with maybe a dumbbell or a kettlebell, or you can go to the gym and do it. And so, you know, again, people want direction and accountability. And so the direction comes in the form of, here's what you do to reach your goals. You know, this is the way the workout is supposed to be set up. This is your warm up. This is your main lift. This is your cool down. This is your cardio. If you don't know how to do an exercise, there's a video that coincides with that particular exercise. And then there's an accountability piece built in where you can message your trainer at any time or your coach at any time, and people check in or track their workouts. And that pops up in the group forum. And so you can see, well, Katie's been to, you know, 6 workouts in a row, like, and just set a personal best. Like, great job, Katie. And, you know, Alex says, hey, you know, I'm going to go on a run next week, like on Monday at 4. Does anyone want to come? And so, like, that helps promote the accountability that's going to come, you know, or that probably wouldn't come were you to just join a Gold's Gym and walk in the door and go, now what? You know, so rather than people follow the Cosmopolitan magazine or the Men's Health magazine or the bodybuilding split and wonder, why am I not reaching my goals? Like, these are age and experience appropriate workouts designed for people to, from a real strength and conditioning standpoint, to actually, you know, make efficient use of their time and not get hurt.
Speaking of a Gold's Gym, et cetera, as far as weight training, it's becoming more known, I guess, more accepted that weight training is a great form. It's not just to get big and bulky. I prefer high reps and not necessarily lighter weights, but as a cyclist, I don't want to get all bulky.
Sure.
Heavy weights versus light weights, benefits to both, and so I'm sort of putting this in the same basket as interval training. A lot of people are finding interval training so useful and efficient to go out for 20 minutes to a half hour a few times a week, burn it really hard. But anyway, back to the weights, heavy weights versus light weights. Is there one you prefer? You think it's good in balance? What are your views on that?
Totally depends on what you're trying to accomplish, you know, and it should depend on what you're trying to accomplish in the time of year that it is, you know. So for me right now, I'm working on setting a strength base for the time that I do start to pick up my running volume and I'm not able to, you know, spend as much time lifting because I need to be running, right? And so for my races later in the year. So I'm using heavier weights, lighter reps in order to build that strength base so that that's there for me in October. Again, best ability, availability, a lot of times there's no need to max out unless you're in a power strength sport.
Now, when you say max out, you mean to failure or weight?
One
or
rep, or repetitions, or even, on that back end, you know, a lot of times we're not necessarily going to failure on on things. There are things that you can go to failure to and be okay, but there's a, with weightlifting and with high intensity interval training, it's not just about your muscles. It's about how that training affects your nervous system. And so your CNS, your central nervous system, can be greatly affected by heavy weights. It can be greatly affected by interval training, which is one of the reasons why it's difficult to do those things on a back-to-back basis or too frequently. So that's one of the big issues I have with potentially something like CrossFit or potentially something like, a Shaun T at-home high-intensity interval training workouts. People tend to do it 4, 5, 6 days a week, get great results, but it's high impact, it's high frequency, it's high intensity, it's high volume, and it burns himself out and gets injured.
Short term.
And so, there was a study that was just released by Penn State Journal or Penn State Medicine, and they said that they followed 65-year-old and older people, 65 and older, for 15 years. A third of the participants died, right? But out of those who lived, those who weight trained or strength trained lived 46% or had a 46% greater chance of living, right?
What's the qualification there? Like any weights at all or within a certain?
They just said strength training,
Okay.
right? So I would imagine that's weights in general. But it really is, it's one of the only ways that you can defy aging.
Yeah.
Think about the things that you do. We, in financial planning, we call them activities of daily living. Eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, maintaining continence, toileting, et cetera, right? If you can't pick yourself up off the toilet, if you fall down and you can't stand back up, if you can't sit up out of your chair, those are push-ups, or those are Turkish get-ups, or those are squats or box squats. If you can't reach something up off the ceiling or, from an upper shelf because you don't have that mobility and you can't raise your arms over your head, that's a push. If you can't turn behind you and reach your purse in the back seat, or you pull out your back because that's an unfamiliar movement to you, that's a rotation, right? And so you drop a quarter on the floor, you either squat down to pick that up or you hinge, do a hip hinge and pick that up. And so if you are training these movement patterns as you age, again, if you use it or lose it. If you use it, you keep it. And so what we're seeing is that people are able to, as they get older, maintain their standard of living, maintain their ability to bend over and pick something up, or pick up their grandkids, or, carry their own luggage. And, you always see those 85-year-old farmers who will break your hand off with a handshake and who still toss hay bales. It's because they never stop doing it. And in our society, you hit 60, 65, you put your feet up, call it quits, head to the retirement area, and maybe you're golfing twice a week, but you're riding the cart. We value comfort so much in our society that it makes us soft in many ways, and it leads to a lot of issues. 75% of deaths are environmental. They're metabolic factors that you are in control of.
You ever see that movie WALL-E?
Yeah, with the little robot?
Yeah, the ship where all the humans have gone out, and they're all just sitting around in these mobile chairs, and none of them have any bone mass or muscle at all.
Yeah. In virtual reality stuff.
Sad,
and no, it's terrible. I mean, but to your point, strength training is a phenomenal tool. In a lot of runners and a lot of endurance athletes, it's very underutilized. In a lot of women, it's very underutilized. Women always, or oftentimes, are afraid they're going to get big and bulky. And I hear you, and I also laugh because it's hard for guys to put on muscle mass, and we have testosterone, and we're predisposed to put on muscle mass much more easily than women are. And so odds are, if you're female and you start strength training, it's going to do wonders for your energy, for your overall physique, and for your confidence. It's very empowering to look at something that you didn't think you could pick up, and that you, for a fact, couldn't pick up a couple months ago. And now you can pick it up and put it over your head. And holy crap, well, what else can I do? And that's the cool part about being a coach and a trainer, is seeing those transformations happen. Because again, when you change that mindset, you can change your world.
And nothing weights more than any exercise. And again, I don't lift for strength, really, just for tone and to feel good. It's amazing how pulled together you feel that you don't get from cardio, running, things of that nature. But you really feel like somebody has pulled the slack out of you.
Yeah.
And you just feel more pulled together. It feels great when you're on them, and everything is an ebb and flow. If I like during the summer, I'm riding all summer. And
Sure.
I'm terrible about going to the gym or doing any weights. But so the winter hits, all of a sudden I have to hit the gym a little bit more, and I feel more toned. It's like, why didn't I feel this way over the summer?
And what you're doing is you're naturally programming for yourself. You're naturally looking at something and saying, okay, well, in this time frame where I can't do the thing that I really love to do, which is be out on my bike and in the mountains and on the road, why don't I at least get some exercise in, and I'll do something that I might not normally do, which will set a good foundation for that time when you're actually out there doing what you want to do, which is cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, you're just intuitively listening to your body and kind of taking what the environment gives you, but making the best of it,
Well, it's amazing how your body, you get addicted to feeling good.
Yeah.
Or at least feeling better than you would otherwise. And once it becomes part of your life, after a few days, if you've done nothing, you feel really cranky and really bad, and you start to really need it.
Yeah.
Which is great. Thanks, body.
Yeah. Thanks for building that in.
Well, cool, man. Let's talk about, we're starting to draw down here. Some of your classes, I was looking at the calendar. Describe what people can expect if they join GS Nation, maybe get the app. Some of the classes that you have in regularity: Hump Day Hills, Core and Flow, of course, Trail Run is kind of self-explanatory, and Functional Foundations. What can people expect out of those?
So Hump Day Hills is kind of our flagship workout of the week. So every 6 a.m. and every 6 p.m. every Wednesday, we're at Libby Hill Park, and I bring out about 1,000 pounds worth of kettlebells, weight plates, sandbags, medicine balls, etc. And it's a phenomenal workout. I put people through, or our coaches put people through dynamic warm-up, and then typically there's a strength component to that. So typically we're going to utilize the sandbags or the weight plates or the kettlebells and go through some compound strength work. So expect all those major fundamental movements. Expect squats and hip hinges and lunges and overhead presses and pulls. But I'm a really big believer in what I call either weighted walks or loaded carries. And this is for everybody. When you add a weight to your body, or you add a load to your body, you can burn as much as 2 to 3 times as many calories as just walking alone, depending on how much weight you add. And you can see this happen if you go into your Fitbit or your Apple Watch or your tracker, and instead of weighing 180 pounds, change your weight to 220 pounds, do a workout, and see how many calories it says you burned, right? Because your body is moving, it's a much higher load through time and space, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we'll do is we'll do these heavy carries, weighted carries. You can do that with the weight vest, you can do that with the weight plate, you can do that throwing a sandbag over your shoulder, and we'll utilize the incline of Libby Hill Park. And you can do this on a treadmill, you can do this on your own hills near your own house, but we're going to jack the heart rate up really high, really quickly, but we're going to be walking. So it's low impact, and you're going to build up strength and muscles in your core and upper back and legs because of that added load. You're going to be able to recover from it the next day. So those are very intense workouts. The Hump Day Hills are, I would say, intermediate to advanced workouts. The trail run will become more difficult as time goes on. Right now, we're 4 weeks into the year, and so I program everything on a macro year-long basis, and we're running 2.5, 3 miles at like 10-minute miles. Super, super easy, just building the base. Core and Flow is if I'm being honest, is a 45-minute stretch based on what's sore on me.
Mm-hmm.
So if Dave's hips are feeling it, we're going to hit hips today.
Dave's recovery day.
Yeah, it's Dave's recovery day. That's every Thursday at 6 p.m. on the deck of the VMFA. And then our Functional Foundations class, I intended for that to be a basics class. We launched that at the beginning of the year, just moving through basic movements, working stability. We may move that to Fridays, so I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like moving forward, but we're always going to do Hump Day Hills for sure. So that's going to be the one that regardless of what else changes or we add and subtract, and we're going to be at Libby Hill Park every 6 a.m. and every 6 p.m. on Wednesdays. So
Cool. And it looks like there's a little something for everybody. You've got a number of instructors and coaches. I thought it was just you and Cary, and then I went to look, and you've got some other folks involved too.
Yeah, we do.
That's really cool. So people can pretty much find, I guess, anything they're looking for as far as fitness.
That was my plan. I've been in Richmond my whole life. I've built up a pretty good network through financial planning and through being here in fitness my whole life, really. And, I wanted to partner with places and be able to bring people to and expose people to other areas of health and fitness and wellness, right? And so, I mentioned that the doctor that had kind of fixed my shoulder, that's Dr. Christina Seibert with Rosti. And we've had 10 or 15 of our members go to her, and she gives us a discount to do so, and they get fixed and they feel better, and then they can come out and do the things that they want to do. We've partnered with Vitality Float Spa in the Fan, and I go see Kinsey from my, one of my 2 massages every month. And I send people to Kinsey and Alyssa over at Mint Boutique, and so I go float, and I want to be able to support her, and I go and support Dr. David Burr at my float zone or the float zone here in Richmond. And, so I've kind of had these relationships, and I feel like it's selfish if I just keep them for me.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, hey, during recovery week, go to these places, and it benefits that business. I'm all about supporting my friends and local businesses here in Richmond, and it benefits our members because they are able to feel better and actually utilize these things. So we're only 7 months old, not even that. We reserve the right to pivot and flow. And, this podcast that we launched could change a whole lot of things for us. I don't know. I mean, I love doing it. Cary loves doing it. Maybe we're mobile now next year and we're going to do mobile podcasting stuff. Who knows what's going on, right? But, we've got a phenomenal community of people.
Community, that's the word. And that's a wellness practice in itself.
100%. That's what 3 out of the Power 9 Blue Zones, kind of characteristics are about. It's about, having people that you can count on, that count on you, that like the same things as you like and are heading in the same direction as you are and are positive. Every cheery friend or happy friend we have in our friend circle increases our own cheeriness by 9%. Every unhappy friend we have decreases our happiness by 7%. And every single person in this community tries their best and has a phenomenal attitude, and we show up for each other's events and we help out one another, and it's just awesome, man. I'm so happy and blessed to be a part of it.
That whole thing, that whole community and support, it's crazy important. And I think maybe on a cynical, in a cynical sort of approach, doubted it. But home field advantage is a real thing.
Yeah.
When you come in from an event and you head to the finish line and there's a whole bunch of people there, you get a lift that you can't even. And I'm just doing it as an enthusiast, not a professional like you. So that's really cool. And you get a sense of that community from your website, and knowing you're just such a positive guy.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, we tell people it's high fives and good vibes, and
that's cool. And you call yourself Alpha Hippie? Is that you? Or?
No, that's not me. I was actually on the Alpha Hippie podcast.
Oh, I see. I saw that on your
website
website somewhere.
Yeah, no, but I really do like that concept, and that's what Angelo asks all of his guests is, he calls it, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what he calls it. I think he calls it strong and kind, but I say kind of something along the lines of like violence in the gym and kindness everywhere else. It doesn't do any good for people to be all, again, all of one thing or all of the other. I want to be able to move mountains if I need to, or run up mountains if I need to, but also lend the helping hand and treat the janitor and the president the same. That's kind of how I was raised, and it's a good ethos to stick with.
Totally, man. We need more of it.
Karma's real. However it manifests itself, karma is really real.
Whatever form.
Exactly.
I mean, people don't believe in karma. Say, if you act like a dick, people are going to treat you like a dick.
Yeah, 100%.
That's karma.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dave Robinson of GS Nation. Anything else you want to hit? We had a pretty good conversation here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. You can find us at the GS Nation on Instagram and Facebook. You can follow me at Get Strapped, Stay Strapped, and we just launched the GS Nation podcast about 2 weeks ago, and can't wait to have you on, because it's going to be exciting to see and talk about personal development and mindset and entrepreneurship and health and wellness from somebody who's also talking about personal development and mindset
it's
and health
community,
and wellness.
man.
And it is, and it's important to support one another. And for people listening, one of the hardest things you can do is to be self-aware and to realize that you are in control, because you are in control. It's not what Trump does. It's not what your mother or father said. It's not necessarily how you were raised. It's not what physical limitations you have. You're in control of your attitude and you're in control of your effort. And those are the only two things you're in control of. And when you control those two things, you can do anything you want to do. And so it's just a matter of being consistent. If you fall off the wagon, get back on. And obviously nobody's perfect. I mean, you should see me during off season. I have a damn good time.
I want to see that.
Yeah, we'll go have some beers after the 12th of October. But knowing what you want and knowing what's going to make you happy in the end. My biggest fear is being 100 years old on my deathbed and wishing that I had done something different, or knowing that I didn't try and I couldn't do anything about it. And that fear has led me to do a lot of cool things, I think. So
cool. That's a good way to bring it full circle. Speaking of Brian Muka and the Fear Sherpa.
Appreciate
anyway,
you,
Dave Robinson, thanks a lot for being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
It's a blast.
So there you have it. See, Dave's a pretty positive guy, and I would definitely trust him to help me work out. I'm a wellness guy, as you can gather from the conversation. I like cycling, working out, stuff like that, but not to the level that Dave does. But that doesn't mean you have to be at that level either. Dave takes everybody from beginners to super advanced athletes, and he will make a place for just about anybody who wants to get in better shape and sort of improve themselves and examine their relationship with wellness. Thanks for checking it out. As we've mentioned a few times, gsnation.com is where Dave is online. That's the GS Nation and the GS Nation podcast. If you have any feedback for me, feel free to hit me up. You can email me at wellandgoodpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, be well.